We needed spring.
Oh, I needed it bad.
He had to take his son to work because he's vomiting.
Oh,
And
gosh.
he can get
Yeah,
somebody
just keep
to come
him
in
down
there
there.
and watch him.
Yeah, just
He'll
keep
come
him down
up.
there.
But I'm like,
Oh,
Cameras on you.
oh, Lord.
All right.
Have we seen anything better of me?
All right.
Okay.
Nothing bad about you.
But anything else, you're on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for waiting.
Sure.
Okay. Welcome to our April meeting of the Pulaski County 911 Emergency Board. Angela, will you take the roll call, please?
We have Stephanie Luton
Yes.
and Jamie Alexander, Deborah Decker, Art Wyndham, absent Dave Howlett, Doug Urico, and Bart Moore.
Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to look over the packets? Anybody have any questions?
No.
Then I would entertain a motion
I'll
to
make a
accept.
motion to accept consent agenda.
second.
Second.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, Angela, will you call the roll, please?
Jamie,
Yes, ma'am.
Deb,
Yes.
Art, you in favor of
Yeah.
passing the? Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Hmm.
next thing on our agenda then is the director's report. Michelle.
Give me just a second.
Okay.
And there's checks. And here's this one. It's all closed. Thank you. How's your pen?
Yeah.
Since he's using mine.
Since I stole it.
It's yours.
Okay, I'll go over our updates. We don't have anything new with our Flex Filming CAD system. On the radio, Doug had talked last month, I'm sorry, about looking into possible another repeater site to cover the west side of the county. I talked to our radio vendor, Mike. He is going to be coming down here soon, this area, to do some work. He's going to swing by, have me take him out to the Hazel Green area to look over. Then they're going to look at doing a area study. And I will probably get with Doug to have him go out with me just to look at that area. I know we had one, Warner did one for us years ago. And to be honest with you, I'm talking over 10 years ago, still even have those maps with the coverage of it when we were talking about it back then. So, but he's going to come down. We'll look at that again. On our GIS grant, it's still just ongoing work. It's not going to be completed till next year. It's just a very long process. Geocom is still doing their work with the boundaries and all that, just verifying. Anytime they come upon a question, they reach back out to Jerry just to confirm any changes that may need to be made. Again, it'll probably be mid Q2 next year before that grant's done. We had a follow-up call on our EZNet on that grant. The circuits have been ordered and they're going to be ordering our backup soon. That their Phelps will be the first county to go, and then us. They're going to install our equipment here in July, and then they're planning for phase 1 shortly after that, so mid part of August. And then what phase 1 will consist of is moving us to the new network. And then phase 2 it'll be just bits and pieces coming on, depending on the carriers. You just have to wait till they can meet the requirements. So that's just going to be as they're available, but they will be, Phelps will be going first. So that makes me always feel good not being the first person to go, so they can work through all the snags along the way. And one of our new hires has started. She's doing, I think I even updated you guys with her last month, but she's doing really well. She's picking up good, and she's due to go on her own on May 5th. We've had another new hire that started just a couple of days ago. Her paperwork for her contract. I thought I brought it and just left it in the office. Doing on all this paperwork. Name's Ariana. She's not local. She's not from the area. She was prior military. Here it is, Anderson. And this is her contract. She just started the 8th, so she'll be with us for a while. And I also had a lady reach out to me yesterday. She's been an 911 operator for 5 years in Virginia, and she's going to be here in June. So when she gets here, we just spoke briefly on the phone, just comparing how they do things there versus us. And their call volume is a lot bigger than ours, but they also have 7 dispatchers on our telecommunicators. That is all the updates on that. We did do additional lunch and learns. We did one with Waynesville school system. And we also met at Lakeway and talked to a group of their seniors and juniors. And then we also did Crocker Career Day. So we have met with all the schools with the exception of Dixon, I think was the only one that didn't get back with us. And it was very good to be able to meet with those students and just give them, not every student looks to go to college, and let them know of the opportunities they could have. A lot of people, when they think of emergency services, they don't think about the 911 side because they only see the responders out in the field. So there was a lot of questions. There were several students from the Waynesville group that asked questions. So it was really good. I did receive a letter from Crocker, the city of Crocker. I'm waiting by email. They said I will be getting a certified copy as well, because that's what the agreement had said. I had not received that yet, but it's regarding the dispatch agreement that we had with them, that they have entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office for within all law enforcement services for the city of Crocker to be provided by the Sheriff's Department. It was effective April 1st. It says we therefore are no longer in need of any dispatch services provided for under this dispatch agreement. Please be advised that correspondence is intended to serve as our 90-day termination letter as required. And then in the body of the email, she said they were sending it certified. I did respond back to her with the inquiry of the other mules entries that we still have for them. When I say that, it's like missing persons, no warrants, be missing persons, stolen guns, stolen articles, anything of that. Because right now, if we would get a hit on that, there's nobody there for us to confirm that with. And so, and they will be, I'm assuming, terminating their ORI since they are joining in with the Sheriff's Department and relinquishing that. So they'll need to come get those entries, meaning our TAC officer will clear them from our system and type up a letter of all the entries for them to sign when they pick them up. And then they'll need whatever they choose to do with them. Yes. And we have to do that as a new requirement. When we get audited, we have to produce where those documents went to.
Okay, now when they sign off on those, how long do they have to get those to the new dispatching?
The timeline, I know
But that's every.
is, I'm not think that because guns have a different as such as a quicker, same thing as a missing persons, and especially if it's a juvenile, because juveniles have to be put in the system within 2 hours.
Okay.
So we haven't cleared them yet. They're still here. Some of my staff had called and asked me what they to do with them if we get a hit on it. And I told them, well, since I've been noted that their services are being covered by the Sheriff's Department, contact the Sheriff's Department and see what they could provide. If we can't get an answer, then we just can't confirm the hit, and they'll have to contact that agency.
So that would be, when you say that agency, they'd have to contact Crocker?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's no one there to contact, so, okay.
Right. So, but I did pass that information onto the
Jessica.
the
Okay.
city. I think she's a city administrator,
Yes.
is what her title is. So that gives an update on that. We do have telecommunicator week coming up next week. That's always a fun time for the dispatchers. And we tried to make them feel really special on that week for them. We had our meeting with the outfitters within our county and sat down. They had given us a list of the mile markers that are on the project that they service the most in their floats and whatnot. So our goal is to get those installed first. And that's why the signs were in here, because we were giving them an example. The red ones are what is going to be on the Ruby or the Big Piney, and then the blue is going to be the Gasconade. And we're planning on, I believe it's the 14th of May, to start doing install. We're going to start on the Hazel Green side up by Gasconade Hills area, because when the water starts to recede and go down, it gets low. That's the first part of the river that gets the lowest. So we want to get them installed first. Then we're just going to work our way down. Hazel Green Fire Chief has volunteered to take us
Great.
out and do those installs. When we come to ones that are in areas that we can't get to or may be unsafe for us to get to, we're going to bypass those. A gentleman that is on Doolittle Fire that we have a really good relationship with, and they have got some equipment that you have to be certified on and that they can climb to higher locations.
Right.
And since they're going to be doing the project in their side and we shared all of our information with them, they've told us they came down here and help us install those ones.
Fantastic.
So we're going to wait all to one time though to do them, so we don't have to ask them to come down several times. So we're excited. Of course, the installs are going to be dependent on the weather, the situation with the river on the water, and as well as our staffing, because we are taking people from here to do that. If we happen to be shorthanded or somebody on PTO, then we have to help cover dispatch. And that's the foremost thing that's important. That covers that. Our call totals, I don't know if you guys saw those. I post them on our Facebook every month. And then it was a little bit slightly higher for the month of March. And the weather played a big part of that with all the fires that we had. And the tornado that hit into Phelps County, we took a lot of calls. We averaged, normal 90 calls for service a day. That day we were almost to 300.
Wow.
And we took a lot of rollover calls for Rolla because we are their backup and they're ours. And so we assisted them in a lot of calls. So our call volume was a bit higher for the month of March. Then also our medical insurance with Anthem is up for renewal because it always renews the first part of June mid-year. And they do an awesome job on providing us everything. Of course, Anthem sends it to me, and then we go through an outside vendor that does shopping around for us. And they provide everything in a pamphlet. I brought it if anybody wants to look at the 13 different options that they give us. But I go through it and look at what would serve our employees the best versus our budget, what we've budgeted for that. And that's why I took those things and I prepared the document that I sent you guys to explain what we currently have on the deductibles, out of pockets, the office visits, what we had budgeted, and with moving forward with the different things, the two options I felt was the closest and the best to cover our staff. Even though with staying with the same policy that we have, would take us a little outside of, because it's every individual's different. It's based on their age and whatnot. It's not the same premium for every employee. So we could adjust throughout the year if you lose an employee and gain another. But with what we estimated, let me find the total here of how much it was going to be. Is right at $1,200 over than what we budgeted for the last 6 months of the budgeted year. But then I also went through our other policy or our other benefits that we offer, such as our retirement and vision, dental. I didn't put on there because it's not a big enough change to be that big of a difference. But because of getting newer folks, they're going to be longer without having loggers because of the wait period. Right. So we'll be saving money there. So I believe it'd be in the best interest to keep the policy that we have, not causing any of our employees to have to change doctors. And the biggest thing is they're going to use is a copay is the biggest thing. So like if they just have to go into a doctor or a specialist, and that's keeping them at the same copayment without having to make any changes. So that was mine. I tried to explain that on the back page of my conclusion of what my reasoning for picking that option would be, was to be recommend staying with the current plan for renewal. Did anybody have any questions over the plans with Anthem?
All insurance is going up.
Mhm.
Part of
It's
it.
every year.
Every year.
I think it was 11% was the overall, if I'm remembering that right, because I know we just renewed our building insurance too, and I can't remember what it was.
I see that Missouri University
Mhm.
have dropped their contract with Anthem, and I know last year some of the other places had dropped Anthem. Are we pretty confident that?
Yes, and I think the reason some of them dropped Anthem is because some of the hospitals were dropping it. Because I know that for the longest time, Mercy was talking about it, but then I think they renegotiated.
Yes.
Anthem is a large, this is Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're a very large company, so I think they'll
It's who we have as
negotiate.
well.
Okay.
I don't perceive them, United, they're all probably your bigger companies, and I don't foresee that they would go very far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just 13% was the building increase.
Okay, so I
it's
was
pretty
right,
far out.
11. I'm sure I had it in here, but with reading through it all, I'm pretty sure it was 11% is what it was. Probably the first page of this. Yeah, 11%.
Do we want to go ahead and renew or wait for the other members to see if they have any questions?
I'll make a motion, we renew it with the option presented.
Okay.
I'll
Do I
second.
have a second? Okay, Angela, would you please do the roll call?
Jamie,
Aye.
Deb,
Aye.
Art? Thank you. That
Thank you.
passes.
The last thing, I have two things last, but the last thing's last. But this is gonna kind of, what I'm gonna bring up is something that goes into my last item. But then I will need to end with going into closed for
Yes.
personnel update. So I'm gonna give you guys this as a draft. I have always, we had a previous secretary that kind of always took care of our agenda. And when we changed back to Angela, I have just been posting it since I'm here, and I was using the agenda given. But it was brought to my attention to a former meeting that we weren't necessarily maybe posting things that people wanted to see on our agenda. And I won't say we're boring, but we're pretty much routine, because we have things that when we do add to the agenda, or when we set our budget, if we change our retirement, things that are out of our ordinary, just updates, and it's not very often. But because of maybe wanting to know what updates we're talking about or what equipment we're talking about, I thought maybe I should extend the agenda for under like the director's report, that I put in there what I'm going to update you guys with. But with saying that, I'm going to push out posting the agenda till we get closer to the meeting time, because I don't always necessarily know everything until it gets closer to time. So some things may come up. And what I was doing with that is I was going and adding things if they did come up or somebody wanted to get on the agenda, then reposting it. But I think it would be easier to wait closer to time.
To meet the 24-hour rule.
So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to still keep kind of the same format. I went to the 911 Oversight Committee with the state because I deal with them a lot. And I looked at their agenda and kind of went off a sample of how they post theirs and then added, of course, the things that fit to us. And so I think this might be a little more fitting. It gives a little bit more detail of, and I put things like what I was discussing today on there as the example.
Mhm.
What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Like it.
that's-
You think
that's
it would
good
be a
thing
little
to
bit
do.
better to do?
Yes.
Like I said, I had never known there was really any difference of a way or maybe more complex way. So I did some research into it and I thought this would probably be best fit that maybe would give people more of an idea of what we're going to talk about.
A question for you on that, just because I'm not as up on this. So say you break this down, these are the things we're going to talk about, and something comes up 12 hours before our meeting that just you think needs to be shared. Can we do that? Or is that something
Yes.
that we can
Yes.
still do?
Because this is a tentative agenda that you guys approve at the beginning of the meeting, but if it's anything financial, I believe doesn't have to be posted within 24 hours.
Unless it's a true
Unless it's an
emergency.
Unless it's an emergency, there's an emergency rule in the.
Wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I might say, when we have down here the legal, personnel, real estate, we might put the subsections, like the 1, 2,
I
3.
looked for that and actually I printed it. And so put like this one, is that what
Right.
you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay, so put for legal actions, number
Yeah.
1, and then
Real
number
estate's
2
2.
was leasing was real estate.
and 3 is personnel.
Yeah,
And
well,
then
it
if
has
there's,
personnel, I think a couple of times in there.
and then if there's
It
any
talks about records.
records, yes. And then if there's any other ones that come up that there's.
I always have this
21
that
sections,
we
okay,
can tend to. If something happens to be out of the ordinary that because normally when we go into, it's either about contracts
Right, or personnel.
or legal. So if those are the ones we use the most, I'll put those on there, but I always have this, if there's another reason, we can always reference to it before we go into close.
Okay.
Will that work?
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
so I'll go ahead and put those numbers
Okay.
on here as what section.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
It looks good.
Before we go into close, I have something else that I wanted to address. And some of you guys may not even know about it. And I wrote notes because you guys know I get sidetracked real easy and get off on, and then I forget where I was. So I'm better if I write it down. And that way I'm not keeping you guys here all day. So I don't know if any of you guys watched or are aware or have been told of a commission meeting that happened last week. I'll be honest with you, I did not watch it, and I think it's the betterment of my blood pressure. But I've been told, and so I wanted to address some of the things that were said. And that's why I wrote them down so I can stay on track. So I'll start off, and I'm just going to kind of go down through some of the comments that were made. Somebody at the meeting, and I'm not going to say any names because I didn't watch it personally to say a name, said that we are very difficult to work with, and that over their 15 years in being in their office, that they've had nothing but difficult times to dealing with us that were hard to get along with. And they have numerous occasions, or there have been numerous occasions that 911 has stepped up and helped other agencies. Whether it was due to limited staffing during COVID, the loss of several dispatch personnel at other agencies, or issues with the mule system or phone outages, which I'll say has fallen under some previous leadership. But we've also extended our support recently under the new leadership at the Sheriff's Department by assisting with radio coverage when they were facing radio difficulties. From the statement of our way or no way, or since we moved up on the hill, we won't work with anyone, there's only a few instances that I have ever had to deal with the commission that they might reference those as being issues. One notable that everybody will remember is back during COVID when the ARPA funds become available to the different emergency services for hazardous pay. Unfortunately, the process wasn't made known to all of the agencies, which caused some of us to get in our requests late or maybe some none at all. We were fortunate. We got one in, and ultimately we did receive some hazardous pay for our team, but it was with a struggle. We were initially told that we weren't considered to be essential personnel. That statement today still puzzles me because we're recognized as first responders. But I wanted to be clear, I don't believe that 911 operators should have received the same recognition as the responders to the hazard pay that had direct contact with COVID patients. Our EMT, our medics, the health department staff, other responders who entered the homes, they truly earned tier 1 status. However, that doesn't diminish the critical role of other first responders. I took that situation head on because I felt like our staff deserved it. Another notable issue that maybe they were referencing to being hard to get along with was the ongoing issue with the dispatch contracts. Those contracts have been part of our system since the inception of 911, with varying participation from departments like the Sheriff's Department based on their leadership. Although I wasn't the director when many of these contracts were formed, I was a telecommunicator. So I was privileged to know the background of how these contracts were developed. The director that developed them, I still have a very good relationship with. So I always go back to bend his ear on how things happened back in the day. Those contracts were designed to provide support during the nighttime hours for the officers that primary were in the office at nighttime working on paperwork, doing evidence management, or just doing the limited amount of calls that were coming in. The rapport between the departments allowed for any kind of resolution to an issue at the time. So there was not very many. We just had really good relationships. But over time, things changed. The coverage moved. When we first started, it was at 11 o'clock at night, where it evolved all the way down to starting at the end of their business hours of covering non-emergency tasks. Yet the duties kept increasing and kept adding. But we tried to keep the contract amounts as reasonable to help them out. But recognizing that the services were expanding and growing, the call volume got higher and higher, made it clear that a significant increase needed to be done. But I knew they couldn't afford it, and I knew it was going to be a struggle. So I came to the board and proposed that when we updated our CAD system, that we try to integrate some additional modules such as records, jail evidence, and mobile access. That would provide them a lot of benefits to be able to see the calls that come in rather than having to go through us if we're busy. So that led to a lot of demos, and ultimately we got it purchased. So with that system, it allowed them to run their own mules, their own traffic stops, as well as use our map data that gives them turn-by-turn directions. The policing units would be able to see the driver's license, the license plate, and you could go on by adding scanners that automatically take a picture of the license plate, pretty much how the highway patrol is set up. And they also could do all their evidence, their jail bookings, and make it all one record and even send it digitally to the prosecuting attorney without even having to go to the office. The neatest thing was they could share each other's calls, and they could see if one was in a pursuit, where they were, if they had AVL, It was just very detailed. And best of all, if we were dispatching for them, they were going to get to use that for free. And they could do away with any of their Crime Star or any other record management that they were paying for. It was going to be provided at no cost. All they had to do was contact or be able to connect to our VPN and have a Windows device. St. Robert was the only policing agency at the time that we did not dispatch for. And they chose to even buy into the program because they wanted to be a part of it and are still using it. We take 911 calls and they see those calls before we're even able to even give it to their dispatch with a much quick response time. But unfortunately, the initiative didn't last long. And most of that was because of, I feel, the lack of training. Within the 2 weeks that was provided for training, there was only one day that all agencies were there. St. Robert was the only one that used the training the whole 2 weeks. So therefore, I think with the lack of knowledge, the best thing that they could come up with would be go back to their Crime Star license. So all of these services have been provided. We try to keep the costs down, but unfortunately, I just was seeing doing call reviews that we weren't able to, or we're not going to be able to keep up on the 911 side because of the additional duties that we were doing. We weren't having great luck at getting conversation with any kind of department heads to fix these problems, even after creating status checks and whatnot. So our last option was to turn to what ABCO offered, and that was to use a formula to come up with a fair way for charge on calls of service. So in June, each agency was provided options, 3 options, and asked to let us know by October which one of those that they were going to choose, whether they were going to keep their services the way they were currently at that time, with the exception of no after hours utilities. Just when power is out, it floods us, and that's when we're busy. Or offer them 24/7 dispatch, that we would have a dedicated dispatcher that would set and do nothing but their dispatch. Of course, it would be at a higher rate because we would have to hire somebody just for that purpose. And if all of the agencies would have to be on board and all be serviced, or they could terminate the policy or the agreement altogether. Sadly, not a single department come talk to me about why they were getting that letter, all the way from their department head, all the way up through their chain of command. The only inquiry came from one chief from one department, which was Crocker, that ended up staying with us, and an attorney that basically had come to the board to ask questions on the utility side. So it was decided that Waynesville was going to create their own dispatch, and Richland was going to join. Dixon joined in with St. Robert, and we currently were not dispatching for county at the time. I am more than willing to ever openly share those costs that were offered, and then they can take it upon themselves to find the budget within that department to see what the line item is for their dispatch. So to say that we weren't getting along, I feel that we did, and you guys did, because you guys had to deal with it. Me coming back with the problems over and over is an unfair statement. My belief that it always has been to operate as a team. All of us have important roles. Dispatch should be dispatch. Law handles law matters. Fire puts out fires. EMS tends to patients. But none of us can achieve our objectives without the support of each other. If we each focus on excelling in our respective areas, there's nothing we cannot accomplish together. Some of the comments that Sheriff Ball had made during that, and an example is 911 is not going to be fixed until it's under the direction of the sheriff. I'm not sure how he could say there's any problems up here because I've not spoke to the man. I've not met the sheriff. I've had no dealings with the sheriff. I did reach out after the Richland shooting, after a press release that he put out that said there was communication issues between the 911 center and his dispatch. After reviewing all that call for 4.5 hours, I was pretty confident that our department excelled. We went over and beyond by helping them contact other agencies to come help. We researched the address to give them future or past times that things had happened at that resident. And so I was concerned of where the communication barrier was. So I do what I always do. I called to figure out how we could fix it. Where was the problem? I called down the sheriff's department to talk to Sheriff Ball and got transferred and ended up talking to the chief deputy, which I had absolutely no issue with because I've known Rex. I've known him for a long time. So I voiced my concern. And he said, as far as he was aware, there was no issue. So the last thing kind of that I want to bring up was that they talked about was the addressing issue. There was a subject at the commission meeting that is a citizen that is upset about the address. I want to first let everybody know this occurred in 2023, and we're still dealing with it. We had changed. It's actually a private driveway that only had 3 residents on it. A homeowner came in wanting to move in a mobile home that put it up over hit the 4th, which is then when we name the road, the physical road, not address them off of the road the driveway's off of. The addressing was set up going from all routes to 5-digit addresses in 1993 when 911 came about. Back then, when 911 was first voted on, the only way for funding was under a tariff, and which put us under the direction of the county commission. County commission then signed a contract with the sheriff to oversee the 911 services at that time. So the agreement was made that 911 was going to pay, funding was going to pay for all the initial road signs. And then after it was all said and done and installed, County Road and Bridge was going to install them. 911 would keep up with the addressing, and County Road and Bridge would install new signs. And to date, that has been continued how it's always been done. We have moved with the times, though, from aerial photography and mapping on them to going to digital mapping. But of course, keeping in scheme with all the requirements for addressing off Tiger files, MSAGs, ranges, right, left, with the Postal Service and all the phone companies and wireless companies. Hence, part of our grant of having to change to make some of the changes that we are. So this gentleman made the request. After investigating into where the home was going to be added is when we found out the road was going to have to be named. Our process was, per the request of the commission, was to send the individual down to the commission because they charge for the road signs to keep them replaced. So we informed the individual that he needed to go down and pay for the sign. And this was all being done within our addressing department. June, he contacted us back, provided a receipt that he went down, met with them, and paid for his sign. So we moved forward with naming the road. The individual did have the request to one of our mapping employees for the name of the road, and it was all sent out on the 23rd of June to all the homeowners of what their new addresses were and forwarded on to the post office. On June 30th, the gentleman that was at the commission meeting called in and talked to the head of our addressing department, and he was not pleased about the name of the road. Evidently, they have got some family quarrels, and he did not approve of the road name because of their disagreement. And he was okay with getting a new address, but he didn't like the name of the road. So my assistant at the time told him that, gave him an option of going back to the gentleman that paid for the road sign and pay him for the cost of the road sign that he paid, go to the other homeowners, and if they would agree to changing their address again and would call in and tell us, then we would go through the process again of starting all over and changing the road back. I was out that day. It was a Friday, and it was the Friday before 4th of July. And he said he would like to talk to me. So my assistant said that when I returned, he would tell me that he requested that I call.
Michelle, can
Yeah.
I interrupt you a little? Who was the entity that named the road?
That
How does that happen? Did we send that request to the commission?
at that time, the individual, when they would go down there, they would give them all that information. We had no paper document that we sent at that time.
Okay.
It was discussed. We would tell, they would ask us, tell us what they would like. We said that would work. Then we would send them to the county commission.
Mhm.
Since this has all happened, now we send them with a paper document with the name on it. So we know that it's been presented. But at that time, no, we would send them down there to meet with them because our main concern of sending them is we need to know if it's going to be a county road or a private road, because that depends on if we name it a lane or a drive.
Mhm.
Because if it's private, it's a drive and it's a white sign. If it's county, it's a lane. And our addressing department always confirms that with the assessor's office to make sure that we know if it's privately or county maintained.
And this one was named a drive, correct?
It was named a drive,
Okay.
correct. It's
Sorry to
private.
interrupt you.
No, no,
Continue.
you're fine. And so I came in after the 4th of July holiday on that Tuesday, and I had a voicemail on my answering machine or on my voicemail, my phone, from Commissioner Helms and requesting that I call him about a road naming situation. I did not call him that Tuesday because the head of my addressing department was off on PTO that day, and I wanted to check the whole situation at hand before I called so I could provide him with the best answer. So the next day, whenever after all my staffing was in, we discussed everything. I had a good hold on it, and it was determined at that time also that Mr. Kelly was requesting a phone call back. So I asked my assistant to call him back and again offer him the options of either keeping it the way it is or again paying back the gentleman for the sign and going through the process again if the other homeowners agree to it. The reason I say that is because people already get upset at us when we change their address, because especially if they have a business or checks or anything, all your change of addressing that you have to do. So we want to make sure that they are okay with it. So I had called Commissioner Helms back, and my assistant called the homeowner back and gave him that option. He at that time asked my assistant if I had talked to Andy, and that's how he adjusts him. So that's why I say Andy yet. And my assistant said, I know she had a voicemail from him, but I don't know if she's talked to him yet or not. And he goes, that's fine. I'll talk to him. When I talked to Commissioner Helms, I explained to him the process of how we address and how it was established. And I even went into a conversation that my assistant had had the previous week with the homeowner. And he had said, and of course it's all recorded because as our lines are all recorded, that makes sense. So I thought that we had been over that, but here we are 2025 and we're still battling it. But at the end of 2024, and I must note, these are all my timelines of the situation. There had been several emails sent back and forth with the commission that I had supplied them with our policies. I even went to a meeting, and it ended up us having in December of 2024 a joint conference call with myself, our council, which is not Ty Smith, by the way. And the only reason I said that because they thought in that same conversation, the commission meeting, that was our attorney. And the prosecutor at the time, which was Mr. Hillman and Mr. Helms. We all four were on a conference call and we went over this whole situation in whole. It was then determined that Mr. Hillman thought the best thing to do would be create an MOA so that even in the future, if this would become an issue, there would be something in writing, because at the time when all this was created, we were under the commission. Well, they're not going to write a contract with themselves because us and Road and Bridge were both under the commission. So to make it MOA so that there's no future question in the future. And also we created a form that I suggested that we send with them down there that has where we put the road name on it. It has a place for them to check off whether it's going to be county road or private road, and also that they had paid for their sign. And then when they come back with that and it's signed, we move forward with the project. They had originally in the MOA or in the drafting of the MOA requested that if they didn't agree with the road sign, that they would email us. And I had asked, no, let's change it to that they call immediately because we'll have a backup list. We have since changed. We're no longer allowing anybody to request a name of a road. We're going to generate that road name and that they call us if they don't agree to it. And then we'll go to the next one on the list. That way people aren't waiting for their address. Because at the time that this all started, there was another road that they had not agreed with, which was Hosanna. But there's been no more issue or nothing else said about that one. But in that conversation at the end, Mr. Holmes had then asked me again, are you going to change the one back to it? And that's something else. And I said, no, everything in the past stays the way it is. And we will go this way forward. Then several phone calls from homeowners. The lady that owns a fourplex that called me many times. She was very upset. She wasn't able to get insurance for her fourplex, which she was wanting to move elderly people into because they would come out to do an inspection and the road sign still had another road on it because they named it the same road that it was off of, just a different drive onto it. And so I explained to her that we have no control over the signs, that if I were her, I'd get a hold of the commission or, call the prosecutor. And she called me several more times, upset, bawling, even to the point she goes to church with these folks and they were saying that they were going to get me fired. And she was calling me all upset, giving me all this detail. So that led us to the conversation that brought Mr. Helms calling our board chairman and bringing the concern back to the board where he addressed that he would hope that 911 doesn't ever want anything from the county commission because they would never agree, or he would never agree to anything benefiting the 911 system. So the reason I bring this stuff up because the public only hears what they're saying. And there's, as the saying is, there's usually two sides to every story. There's a reason that things happen, and it's not because we don't want to get along. We just have to follow a protocol. They brought up about our budget. The sheriff had mentioned, that he wanted a copy of our budget. Come ask.
Can
We'll
I
give
ask you one more
anybody.
thing?
Yeah.
Is that option of going to the neighbors, getting the sign paid for, getting the same feedback from the neighbors that it's okay to change the name, is that option still available for that
Yes.
individual?
And I told them that on the thing.
So this can be remedied tomorrow.
By an application and
Yes.
getting it approved at the
Yes.
county.
All we need is a phone call from the homeowners telling us that they're okay with changing their address.
Okay.
And
And there's only a total of 4, correct? On that drive?
And we'll move forward with the process starting like we would again. We would have him make a request to
Just
add
like the original
address.
gentleman did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask about, you had made a comment about wanting to move elderly in. At that time, is this like a new?
I think it was, and I'm saying thinking because I cannot say for certain on this. I think it was an existing building that they bought and they made it renovated it into.
Yeah, it's a nice
Like
place.
efficiency apartments or something.
But I think
Yeah,
it's
I
like
didn't go
55 and older. It's going to
Okay.
kind of be that maybe need,
Senior housing.
Yeah,
Okay.
similar to that. They also made a comment that very bold that we went out there and took the sign down because our current prosecutor said, because Mr. Kelly was very angry and said, you guys wrote an ordinance, which the city did, or the county did. They gave us a copy of that. That why are they not enforcing it? Why isn't somebody getting in trouble? And the prosecutor said, well, this is not a criminal act. It's more civil unless somebody's taken a sign down that could cause a problem. And they said, well, the sign has been taken down. And one of the commissioners said, well, I'm not saying they took the sign down, but somebody took a sign. And then Mr. Kelly goes, well, I'll say it. 911 took the sign down. That is false. We do not deal with the signs. We don't go take signs down. That is far from being true. But they also referenced our budget. And, you know, anybody that deals with budgets know that that bottom dollar is not always what your income, your revenue is. And by looking at our budget, you would understand we are a quarter-cent sales tax, and that's how our county is funded, sales tax. So it should be pretty easy for them to figure out what our tax rate is coming in with knowing our tax rate. But because of how we keep our equipment updated in rotation, you know, we are always buying equipment. So we bring that money over for a purchase that you within our budget. So just because you see that that is our budget doesn't always necessarily mean that is what our revenue is. So that's something that
And this budget's submitted to the clerk every December, January, correct?
we submit to
Or to
the state auditor's office.
Okay.
Because that's who we report to. You know, I'm a very open person. You guys know that. I've had one person come up and request a copy of our budget, and I have given it to him. I tell people we have an outside accountant that looks over our checks and balances.
Very transparent.
The board, you know, approves everything and signs the checks, and everything is straight out. We'll give a copy of anything that you want to know. But I want people to also know there was a statement that was made and implied about when is their next election, you know, about getting people to run for our budget or our board. Our board of directors are volunteers. Although they do run for these positions, they get paid nothing and they take a lot of headache. But they do an outstanding job. They ensure that we have the best equipment. We have a well-maintained facility. We have ongoing training. We have excellent benefits. So when a discussion arises that when is the next election, I hope these people please keep in mind that our focus is about serving the community and doing better and not hidden agendas. And so I realize that there might be points of things that I've overlooked and I didn't bring up that all was discussed, but I took those things very personal because it was referenced over and over in that conversation, the lady that runs it up there. Well, I'm that lady. My name's Michelle. And the people that I work with are professionals, such as on Fort Leonard Wood and other agencies. I'm on committees at state levels. When people come in and they hear those meetings, that is their first impression that they're getting of me. And I don't like it because that's not who I am. So I'll tell anybody, I'm straightforward, I'm honest, but I will not be pushed to do something that's unethical or is wrong. I'll answer your question. It may not be what you like to hear, but I'll be honest with you. If I don't know, I promise I'll tell you that I'll research it and I'll get you an answer. I don't know where things have went so south between departments. I don't know. We should all be doing these kind of jobs for the same purpose. My goal, and the reason I love what I do, if I can help one person, I've achieved my goal. And it takes all of us to work together. But when we're working against each other, it's not going to be successful. And until we get people that want to play in those roles, it's not going to be successful. So I hope everybody can step back and take a look at what they've said, research things that have been said, and not take it always at face value. Because I'll be honest, I don't know how much more I can take of people being so devious and so write out lies. Because then on the other hand, they're posting things of how they're doing such marvelous jobs, which is great. But then you're being devious on the backside of trying to undercut and cut throats of other people that you should be working with. Because we're the first people that when they call and ask for help, we're willing to help.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you guys an update. I don't know who saw it. Like I said, I had said yesterday, and he came up and asked to meet with me. He emailed me after that meeting, asked for a copy of our budget. I gave it to him, and I told him I'm very transparent. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. He asked to meet with me, and I sat and we had a very long, nice talk yesterday. And I think he's going to come back, and we're going to do a little tour of the center, and we're going to let the folks see what we do, what we have. To say, another comment is we sit here and we do nothing. I post our calls. It's far from nothing, I promise you. Now, there might be times we're sitting there doing nothing when no calls come in, and we like that because people aren't having emergencies. But when they hit, they hit. And so I think we're going to get to do a little, briefing of the center. Of course, we'll have to make sure we're not busy in the center and take things down off screens and meet all that compliance. But I encourage people always on the outside. This is their 911 center. We're tax supported. Come in and see what we're about. I love showing this place off. I'm the last one standing here that started. And, but I do take it personal when they direct that to me and say that we're doing nothing or imply that we're being shady, because that's the last thing.
Well said.
Oh, Doug had a question.
Is there room on your agenda for questions?
We do not. That was a thing of the past. Unless the board wants to change it, just because people sometimes we've learned show up at meetings and want to flood, and then they're here forever because they have jobs. But I would assume since you're the only one here, the board would probably have absolutely no problem if you had a question.
One question.
Sure.
The second question, what was that system's name that you were talking about that you in place that only, I think St. Robert was talking about?
It's our CAD system, but it's called Flex. It used to be called Spillman, which a lot of them reference it because when we first bought it, it was called Spillman. And in the middle of our transition, they got bought out by Motorola and changed the name. But it's called Flex now, but they probably reference it as Spillman.
Is St. Robert still using it?
They are.
So has there ever been a comparative analysis between all the systems that are in use across the county, other than that, between the municipalities and that?
Well, I could tell you this, that even though we do not dispatch for Richland and Dixon anymore, they still pay to be a part of the system so they could see the call volume or the calls as we bring them in. And of course, we just recently lost Crocker, but Crocker was having it as well. So Waynesville bought into it, so their dispatch can see it too. Now, I cannot tell you how often their dispatch is using it because I've not talked to them, but when I log on, I can see some of their officers log on. But it works well because they can see the calls, and as my dispatcher's typing as they're getting more call information, they get a live update on that.
But would they be able to use it if they wanted to versus the system that they're using, the other system?
The only thing they would have to do if we don't dispatch for them, they just have to pay the maintenance side of it because that is something that is required for having the system. And that's what St. Robert does.
And has a cost analysis been done, do you know, at each municipality where they could switch to the common system across the enterprise, i.e. Pulaski County?
I don't think one has been done system-wide because they all use something different. I know some of them use crime.
It makes no sense to me why we would use a different system across the
Yeah,
enterprise.
I don't know. And that was our whole reasoning of getting that bundle.
Right.
Because it's all, and I know it doesn't make sense to a lot of people if they don't understand emergency services,
Sure.
but we could generate the call and start the record. And then if it's law, they go out and they could write a report on the record side and it would tag it to that original report. And then same thing if they arrested somebody, the jail portion would go on if they had evidence. And it's the whole same system, but it makes it one record. But as the dispatchers can't go look at the records because that's a closed off petition
Sure.
to law enforcement. And then they could install the Spillman on at the prosecutor's office, and then they could submit the whole record digitally through to the prosecutor's office. So that is still available. I'll be honest with you, when everybody quit using it, when I say using it, the records and the jail and the evidence, we quit paying maintenance on it because nobody was using it. So we still own the interface and the licensing, so it could be brought back They would just have to pick up the maintenance side of it. Now, the other agencies, when I say they're paying to be a part of it, they're using the mobile side so they can just see the calls come in. Like I use, for instance, St. Robert. If we take a call and it pops up on their screen that it's in their jurisdiction, they're seeing everything and they can give it out immediately to their.
But they don't use it for the thorough process where.
No, they stopped when everybody else stopped. They were using it. And the reason they bought into that part of it is because I'm going to give you just make up an example. Say I'm in Dixon, I get pulled over and the officer gives me a warning for no license plate. Say a week later, I get pulled over in St. Robert and they put my name in the system. It pops up under the peoples that everybody have access to. They can see that I got pulled over in Dixon last week and was given a warning for not having my license plate. Well, now that officer might say, okay, well, they've already been warned once. Now I'm going to enforce it. That's a very minor example, but it goes all the way up of different things. Also, when we had the interface made to where if anybody enters a warrant for somebody, it also puts it in the people's file under that name. So if they look Michelle up and I had a warrant, it would say there's an active warrant. So they would know that, and it automatically interfaces with the mules interface. So there's just a lot that it does. We set up a couple of the officers at Waynesville that they could push one button on their keyboard, and with the AVL on the system, it would generate a traffic stop and use the address to the closest one to their location with just one push of a button. And it goes on and on. They could have a driver's license reader on their dash, and it would automatically take a picture of it and run it and pull it up on their system. Then they could take their license with the barcode on the back and just push it into a scan reader, and within 2 seconds, it gives them the reply.
And now they're doing it phonetically over.
Yes. Yep.
Has anybody explained why they don't use it?
Unknown caller. Well, the reasoning I got is that officer safety. By happen to go back to the car to scan it. And my rebuttal to it was, well, they're still having to take their eyes off the person because they're having to read it off of the driver's license. I mean, back in the day, it used to be everybody's name was Bob, Beth, Joe, common spelling. Well, there's nothing real common spelling anymore.
Follow up. Could the Pulaski County prosecutor require that system if it was more beneficial for them to streamline the process? Basically say, I won't accept anything but.
I don't know what their policy, what they can or can't do. I mean, they could do if they want to use it and they want to force, or, if they have the right to force them to use it, and we still own it, we would still allow them to use it. Matter of fact, right before Crocker decided to change, when Ishmael had came back temporarily, he came back and talked to me, and I put him in touch with our vendor about, he was thinking about switching back over to using it because he didn't care for the records that they were using. And it was a very cheap price that they offered them to even come back and do training all over again with his department.
Sometimes it's not the cost at the time.
Mm-hmm. Or the outcome, the long-term outcome.
Or the safety of spelling it correctly. It's just.
There's a legal aspect as well, as far as efficiency and effectiveness, as far as the tracking of the case, court matter, and the documents, and go straight from the court, the law enforcement official to the prosecutor. And see, everybody knows where it's at every step of the way. It's like a SharePoint workflow process or team.
Well, I just offered it as a benefit because I was more concerned on the mobile side because that's what benefits my dispatchers. But when we did the demo, they loved the records portion in that. And I said, well, if we're going to do it, getting it in a bundle is going to be at our best. And at that time, Sheriff Long was here. Mm-hmm. He would make fun of me because he would say, Michelle, this isn't new. I was so excited. And he said, this isn't new technology. I was using this in Texas before I moved here. And he was real excited to get it as well. And then unfortunately, he moved and didn't stay in the next term. But everybody was on board. We even did big demos because we wanted to make sure everybody was on board before we moved forward with it. And so I just get lost of how things went south so quickly.
Sounds like we need a champion.
I just wish department heads would step up and be department heads and communicate with each other. I want to know if there's a department, we are no by far by any means perfect.
Sure.
But if there's a problem within my department, I want to know about it so we can figure out where it's at, we can fix it.
Thank you.
And if you have time every Thursday that we have this meeting, you're welcome to sit right in here. Anybody is, as far as that goes. Never, as she said, it's transparent. So we would like nothing more than the truth of this organization to be out in the public, because we catch a lot of flack for not a lot of good reason, it seems.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it.
Last comment.
Sure.
Posting your agenda. I'm anti-social media.
If you've asked me to send it to you by email, and I will send that.
Put it to your webpage. I shouldn't have to subscribe or anybody else subscribe to Facebook or social media to get to a publicly accessible document.
We can put that on
That's
our.
not a bad idea.
yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Just put it there.
I'll have I'm not
Yeah, 'cause
really
they're out to
visually
get you.
inclined. I'll have them do that.
They're out to get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have them post that for me. Like I said, I don't upkeep our website, but my assistant, I can have him post it. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for that.
As a public record, you can whatever process you guys do.
Sure. I'll post it on the board and we'll post it on our webpage as well. And the last thing I have before we go into close, our next meeting is scheduled for May 8th. Is everybody good with that date? Do we have enough?
I may not be here. We'll
Okay.
see. Our wellness conference is the next day, and so I'll be setting up for that at Waypoint. So
Understood.
I'll see how my day's gonna look.
Okay.
It may or may not.
And the others, all when I send out everything, if they comment back to me that, and I look like it's going to be a problem, us having a quorum, then we'll address it at that point. But as long as everybody else is good, I think we should be good.
Okay.
And other than that, Madam Chairman, I need to be able to go in closed session for personnel.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a need to go into closed session for
Okay.
personnel.
I'll make a motion to
Hang on,
adjourn.
let me get the session.
She has to say the number.
Yeah. Under 610-021 and be subsection 3, may I have
I'm
a
not doing
motion?
it now.
For personnel.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Open
Thank you.
session.
And I'll have no further business.
I'll second.